So I wanted to start making videos tracking my progress. I'm healing Lyme disease. I'm here in Pizek, Peru. I've been here for about 7 weeks. I just completed a 114-day juice fast about just over 2 weeks ago. It was the first 80 days. What I did is known as the Master Fast. It's a grape juice and lemon fast with intermittent dry fasting, where you also take a psyllium charcoal and clay mixture every day, unless you're dry fasting, and also several herbal tinctures to help move all the toxins out of the body and balance out the glands and the adrenals and all the systems of the body. This is kind of dark, but I don't feel like moving, so this is how it's going to be. So, the past 2 weeks have been pretty rough. Every little wrong food I eat makes me sick. Fruits have been okay. That's what I broke the fast on for the first few days. Salads have been alright, and even like steamed veggies, quinoa, have been okay. But heavy spices, curry powder's okay, but heavy spices have been hard on me. Rice, kimchi really fucked me up. I did that on day 7. It's at day 7 breaking the fast. And it's just been kind of frustrating. Being done with the fast and then still not being able to eat certain foods that I used to consider healthy. But I'm seeing that, either it's too early or, they always say grains are bad. So it makes sense. So the rice has been really hard to digest. I've only eaten it twice. Soy sauce has been pretty, I'm actually not sure, but I think it's not treating me so well because I ate it with rice, so hard to tell. It was a sushi plate. It was really good. So I guess a little history about myself. I'm gonna go set up shop somewhere you guys can see me better. I don't know. I'm not sure it's gonna work. There's just the one little light in here. I'll just have to remain mysterious. You'll get to see me in the next video. So this is my shadow self. So I just got diagnosed with Lyme disease about just over a year ago. But it is my suspicion that I've had it since I was very young, at least 7th or 8th grade, perhaps earlier, elementary school. It was a very slow onset. When I really started noticing symptoms around the summer of 8th grade, I got hit with this really bad depression, which was completely new for me. I never had really experienced that much in my life before, if at all. And then prior to that, I had some symptoms of obsessive compulsive disorder that were very mild. They started out, I would say, elementary school. I never really told anyone about them. And then they got worse in middle school. The focus of my obsessions changed a bit. But it was never to the point of being really having such a strong impact on my life that, I was still happy. I had fun at school. Um, for the most part, I was in good spirits. But then just before high school, I got very depressed, and I had started smoking weed around that time, and I kind of blamed it all on that, and was trying to, keep that secret from my parents, so I never told anyone about what was going on with me. And my friends were smoking a bunch of weed too, but they didn't seem to be affected by it, and it kind of made me confused. Everyone has different reactions to things, but I figured I just didn't get it. But I continued to smoke a lot of weed throughout high school. Hung with kind of a stoner crowd, um, smoking more than I even felt comfortable smoking, just to, I don't know, fit my image or whatever, high school stuff. So then I went into college. I went to Chico State University. Um, I already partied a lot in high school, drinking on the weekends and stuff, but that exacerbated in college, and it got to pretty abusive levels um, over the years. I mean, it was abusive freshman year, sophomore year, but it seemed to get a little worse over the course of my time there. And I also just kept getting sicker and sicker about age 20, like 20, almost 21. Physical symptoms started getting really bad, like neurological stuff, not being able to concentrate, focus, heightened anxiety. I started developing this ache on the side of my head, my left side over here. And this all started happening kind of just before I was working at this metal shop, and I was drinking a ton. Um, and that was definitely had some to blame on what I was experiencing, obviously. And by this point, I had also gotten really into ecstasy and had been doing a fair amount of that. So where was I? So yeah, so then I started working at this metal plant, grinding welds, like a steel shop, 5 days a week, 40 hours a week, and that made things worse. And I know now, looking back, because I was inhaling a ton of metal fumes, like dust particles, heavy metals, which wreak havoc on the immune system, nervous system, can cause all sorts of psychological, behavioral shifts. And I only worked there 2 months, but in the state that my body was already in, it couldn't handle that amount of extra exposure to toxins, and it really kind of tipped me over the edge. Um, so that's when I was 21. I turned 21 as I was working there, and then things just kept kind of progressively getting worse. I didn't really. I thought my lifestyle was to blame, but I was kind of in a rut. Just kept drinking a lot, especially on the weekends. But I'd go through phases where I drink a decent amount, a lot actually, on the weekdays too. I hardly went a day without a beer. Um, I wouldn't say that I was so physically dependent that I couldn't go a day without alcohol, because I did. Like if I was really hungover and just knew that I needed a break. But I always pushed it over the edge to the extreme. I blacked out a lot. And what started happening is I would need to drink in order for this one, well, all my symptoms, but particularly this ache in the side of my head. It would go away after like 2 beers, 2 or 3 beers, a few drinks, and then it'd be like, excuse me, I've been really sick today. I had some French fries the other night. Stupid. And I was sleeping for like 33 hours the past couple days. I haven't left bed in like 48. And my stomach has just been not in good shape. Farting, burping, cramping, hurting, crying. It's been a really shitty day. Ugh. Um. So back to the history of me. Um. So then yeah. So what would happen is that I'd go out and I party, and then all the symptoms would go away, and then I'd get really drunk. I'd wake up the next day, and it'd be like come back like 10 times stronger. And then I'd usually go the whole day, like trying to recover, drinking lots of water and stuff. And then I go out the next night. Say that was Friday night. Then I go out Saturday night. The same thing would happen. This like big relief followed by exacerbation of everything I was trying to drink to get rid of. Also, of course, emotionally and um, on all levels. Um, but then, like by the end of the weekend, I would be just trashed, and I would kind of like back off the alcohol. I never really did any drugs during the week. Um, to the point where like the symptom in my head was like almost gone, but still kind of there. And then I'd be like, all right, like give me a beer and I'll wipe this clean. And then it just kind of became this weekend cycle. And that went on until I was about 20, 22, where I I went to work at this job in Alaska at a fishery. It's the hardest job I've ever worked. It's 7 days a week, 16 hours a day. And I went sober. I was smoking cigarettes, but I didn't smoke any weed or drink or anything. And things got a little better, but I was also having like no sleep, like sleeping like 5 hours a night, burning the candle at both ends, working my ass off. And so, anyways, then it ended me getting really drunk. So, and then I decided I'm going to quit drinking for a month when I got back to school. And I did, but nothing got better. All the symptoms were just as bad, and it really freaked me out because I was like, I thought this was a result of all this abuse I was doing to my body. Now I'm taking pretty good care of it. I wasn't eating very well. I didn't really know much about health back then, but compared to how I was living, it was much better, and I was really struggling to make it in school, drinking tons of coffee, which made it worse. Sleeping like 2 3 hours a night. Couldn't fall asleep because of this thing that was on my head and all these symptoms that I had no idea where they were coming from or what I did. I thought, oh, I must have done this to myself. Must have fried a circuit, or I don't know. I didn't know. I had no idea what was going on. So I got very depressed that year because these symptoms had become much worse than when they first started, and um, I just remember thinking like everything I've ever gone through up until this point, like I would trade that, all the struggles I had been through, it would not compare to this at all, and just feeling very like down about, just and scared, terrified of what had happened to me and what was to become of me. Um, and not, friends and I wasn't very vocal at this point. I was a little bit about the headache to some friends, and um, they were somewhat supportive, but didn't really take me seriously. Kind of like there's a attitude in college. You don't need sleep. Like, come on, like get up, let's go. Um, so I didn't know what was going on. Friends didn't know what was going on. They couldn't feel it, and I remember thinking like, I don't think there's anyone in the world that is experiencing what I am right now. Like I've never experienced this phenomena, these sensations in my body or my mind had totally become warped from the Lyme. The bacteria had made its way into my nervous system, and it was affecting me on all levels. Still is. Um, so what was I going over? I'm pretty out of it now. So yeah, that was my last year in college, and so I started drinking again after that month because I was like, if I'm gonna feel this way without it, might as well drink. And that went on for about another year or less, 7 months or something like that, till the summer. And then I kind of made another effort at quitting drinking, um, which I went back and forth about. I don't know, 2 or 3 more times, or I quit and then started again, and then quit, and then finally, the first of year 2014, I gave it up pretty much for good. I quit smoking weed too for like 9 months, then started that up again. Um, and I've drank a few times since then, but 99% of the days have been, or more, have been alcohol free. So that's good, but I can't say that's where the struggle stopped. That's probably where it started, like getting more severe. Like the Lyme kept getting worse, and what started happening is I started really trying to take control of my own health, like restore my brain chemistry. I thought it was all from drinking and drugs at this point, so I was like researching neurotransmitters obsessively and neurology and what foods to eat to increase serotonin and what vitamins to take, just the whole spectrum of natural healing. I just delved right into. And what happened though is I was so sensitive. I mean, I still am, but to all of these herbs and supplements and things, and these crazy reactions would happen to me, and which I now know is detox, and that I was having Herxheimer reactions a lot of time, which is when you take something like an herb or probiotics can do it. Um, Antibiotics would be the strongest, but something that can kill bacteria, and there's a lot of fucking things out there that kill bacteria. I mean, we're talking garlic, coconut oil, onion, um, just like lots of little things. Um, so I was very sensitive, and I was actually at the time um, growing marijuana with a buddy of mine up on the middle of nowhere on this hill in Northern California, and it we were out there with no electricity, no running water, no cell phone service, no shower, no bed. I mean, we were living in a a shack that my friends the year before had built. From they actually like cut down trees and put some plywood up, and that was basically it. I was sleeping in cots and basically camping, which I don't mind, but it was pretty miserable given my condition. And I thought I was gonna die a few times out there, um, and it was just really, really frightening. And glad that's over with. So then this whole time, I'll back up a bit. Before like deciding I was gonna drink or not gonna drink anymore, I drink ayahuasca, which is a psychedelic brew from the Amazon used for healing and other things, spiritual growth, and depends who you'd ask. But um, I had gotten like the strong confirmation that I should quit drinking, and that um, I decided I was going to go to Peru. The following year after I had made money from growing weed and drink more ayahuasca, and from San Pedro too, which is a cactus with it's kind of like peyote, has a mescaline content in it, which is responsible for a lot of its psychoactive properties. Though there's other things in it that it's not just mescaline. There's like 40, 20, 40 different alkaloids or something, which are like plant compounds. But mescaline is the most known psychoactive one. So then I get through the weed farm, move back to my parents for a few months, then head off to Peru, where I go to an ayahuasca retreat. um, And I drank once and had a pretty crazy experience. Mentally thought all this stuff was happening. And then the second time I drank, um, some kind of personal stuff came up, um, like stuff I had forgotten about. Um, but then like my mind went out like kind of haywire and spinning out of control. But anyways, the next morning when I woke up, I did not feel right. Like something had changed within me. Like my mental functioning was not working the way it was before, and I had a bit of some identity loss. I wouldn't say ego death, but definitely some identity loss. You know, broke the veil a little bit, so to speak. And not many people at the retreat were taking me seriously about what I was experiencing. I had this huge ache in the center of my head, and so I decided not to drink again, even though people were kind of nudging me in that direction. Um, and no one, I mean, I didn't know I had Lyme disease at this time. No one at the retreat did either. And it took me about a month and a half for that weirdness to kind of go away. It wasn't until I drank San Pedro later, a different part in Peru, it kind of brought me back down to baseline, like grounded me into the earth plane, I guess. Before I felt a bit out there. And this whole time prior to this, I was getting altitude sickness, waking up with like both arms completely limp. I had to go to the hospital once, get oxygen, and yeah, it was only $16 to stay overnight. So yeah, don't stress if you're in an emergency situation in Peru. It's pretty cheap. Um, so then I think at that same San Pedro ceremony I was just describing that kind of brought me back to baseline. Um, um, I met this. Everyone says an intention before you do a ceremony, like why you're doing it. What do you seek to get from the experience? And you say it out loud to the group. And I was saying people had got me convinced at the ayahuasca retreat that my symptoms were from buried trauma or like emotionally based stuff in the subconscious that is manifesting physically. And I still believe that's true, probably, for a large extent. But, Lyme is a physical illness, and your best shot of beating it is by tackling it from all angles, and certainly a lot of physical needs to be done as well as emotional. But anyway, so I say like, oh, I got all these symptoms, and I feel like I'm maybe a bit repressed emotionally, and I just need to like feel these emotions in order to get these symptoms to go away. And this girl comes up to me afterwards. The administrator actually wanted to have a talk to me, and she asked if she could join the talk, and she says, I have Lyme disease, and you sound a lot like I did before things got really bad for me. And I'm like, oh man, like, didn't take her all that seriously, and we just drank the medicine, so I was a bit like um, taken back by that information, especially going into it was going to be my first time drinking it. But it all worked out. It didn't get stuck in my mind or anything, and thank God she told me. So, I wasn't thinking that. I kind of took what she said with a grain of salt. She had was much worse than me at that point, or had been at least. I, wasn't really ready for that to be true. But anyhow, when I went home, I did about 4 more San Pedro ceremonies, or 3 more. Got some stuff out of them. But went home very disappointed because I thought that I was gonna come back all better, and, perhaps enlightened or something. And it wasn't really the case, although there was definitely valuable lessons learned there. But I got the standard test when I got back, just at my Kaiser. It's like the local hospital where I'm from. and it came up negative, which is very common, which is what my friend had told me is highly possible. So, but then I didn't get. I kind of bailed on the idea that I had Lyme for another year until things got really, really, really bad. Like, I I felt mentally handicapped, severely neurologically impaired. My brain fog had gotten so bad that I couldn't function, like barely even watch like TV, and it's hard to make sense, but I just couldn't do anything. Um, and leading up to this, I'd been doing this whole detox program with a sauna, and it pushed me too hard. I don't really know exactly what happened, but it screwed me up big time. And oh god, my heart, my stomach, really ready for this shit to be over. So yeah, so then I called my friend who I met with Lyme, and she told me, like, seemed very confident that I had it and that I needed to get this special test done, which cost $1,000. And at the time, I had really been feeling kind of like a burden and guilty about all the money that my parents, um, there was a lot of pressure to get a job and get something moving for myself, and now I had to ask for this $1,000 test. But I did, and it came up positive. I actually happened to just start seeing this naturopath for alternative reasons, thinking I had something else going on with me, some other rabbit hole, a million that I jumped down. And she just turned out to be a Lyme specialist, and asked me for my test results, which I had misinterpreted as negative actually a few months prior, or like 2 months prior. And then that's how I got my diagnosis. And um, a year went by. I, I started working with the naturopath again. Or I mean, with that naturopath that diagnosed me for about 6 months. Didn't see all that much improvement. Was on a candida diet, a lot of meat, a lot of vegetables. That's pretty much it. But then I started working with an herbalist that lives here in Peru, who was the one overseeing my friend's healing while she was here, that introduced me to Lyme. And I worked with her for about 5 months. Started that. She's we were. I'm doing a fruitarian style diet. That's what I did, phasing into my long fast of 114 days. Um, the the 80 days were the master fast with the grape juice and the dry fasting. And then when I got here on day 80, I switched to raw fruit juices. They have a juice bar here. It's kind of convenient. Um, and I'm really running out of steam. I gotta lie down and just. There'll be part two. All right. Ciao.